Hello, everyone. Welcome back to this episode of Just Another Year Chicago. My name is Nick Brody, joined alongside my good friend and co-host, Tony Sapita. Happy NFL Draft Monday. It's draft week, and this is probably arguably the biggest Bears draft in every year we say that. But this one is very, very big because this is Ryan Poles' first year as the Chicago Bears general manager, along with Ian Cunningham being the assistant general manager of the Chicago Bears, first one ever, by the way. But the draft begins this upcoming Thursday, April 28th, 2022, and runs all the way through the weekend. We are very, very excited about this because Ryan Poles has been a part of a very successful Kansas City Chiefs team and has been very involved in the draft for the last couple of years. They have more Super Bowls in the last 10 years than the Bears have playoff wins. So just had to throw that joke out there. I'm sorry.
It's true.
It's true. So instead of doing a mock draft today, like we kind of promised, we're going to do a breakdown of arguably the most important position group that the Bears have to go through, and that is the offensive line. Bears currently do have 10 guys on the roster that can play offensive line, but that is not enough. So, Tony, can you go through a little bit with the viewers who is on the current offensive line, the current offensive line room for the Chicago Bears?
Yeah, so currently it is Cody Whitehair, Teven Jenkins, Larry Borom, Lucas Patrick, Dakota Dozier, Julien Davenport, Sam Mustipher, Lachavious, I think I nailed that, Simmons, Willie Wright, which fantastic name. I think we talked about that a couple of weeks ago. Tyrone Wheathley Jr. Just said all three pronunciations.
Tony's given all three options in case.
Yep. You apply the correct one and we're good to go. So they have two of each position right now, which is, just kind of what you need just in case you need at least two. But it is not enough, especially with the curse of injuries for the Chicago Bears offensive lines, as we saw last year. And I think literally every other year that Nick and I have both been alive. Sam Mustipher will likely either be released or be a backup since Lucas Patrick has been working at center. At least he's been seen working at center with the ones. But again, still early, so not totally sure. Nick,
one quick comment about Sam Mustipher. It's not that he's a bad player. Okay, like he was very good during the COVID season. And last year was a fall off. And that usually happens because guys figure out how guys work in the NFL. And Sam Mustipher could come out and be like an amazing center from this past offseason, a little fire under the seat. And, Patrick could play guard, and that's totally fine. But the Bears do need to get depth at offensive line still, because 10 guys is not enough, especially with how frequently offensive line get injured. So, Tony, run for the first guy that could be a potentially good fit for the Chicago Bears.
Yeah, so this is the guy, I think, of the draft for anyone that's basically picking outside of the top, 17. I think every single team says they want him. So Kenyon Green, offensive lineman from Texas A&M. We keep talking about this guy because he is someone with a lot of upside. They can fall into our laps potentially without worrying too much about trading up. So he is he's either going to go, kind of like halfway through the first round, or we might draft him technically early. Very weird draft, as we keep saying. He's 6'4", 324, 21 years old. He can have he can be a very nice guard across from Cody Whitehair. He has this NFL ready frame. He's big, but he wears it well, which is important. He can compete with defensive linemen that are quick, but that are also big. Again, obviously, when you got the Aaron Donalds in the league, but you also got just, Akeem Hickses, guys like that, very important that you can handle both. Strong run blocker, according to a bunch of analysts. Strong leg power, quick out the ball, and a strong pass blocker, which is important. So the one note, and I think we've gotten a comment about it every single mock draft in the comments below, he's a big penalty guy, which I know the Bears obviously have struggled with forever. Hopefully with the correct discipline with Matt Eberflus as opposed to Matt Nagy, that's something that they can kind of work on if they were to take him, and it shouldn't be too much of an issue.
Yeah, and you know what? Penalties, have been a struggle for the Bears. The Bears are one of the most penalized offensive lines over the last 5 seasons, specifically with Matt Nagy, of course. So
yes.
I think that's something that the Bears need to consider, and that's a lot of reason. He'd be arguably a top 15 pick, kind of like what Tony was saying, if it wasn't for his penalty issues. So hopefully he can kind of work on that, but he is a beast of an offensive lineman. And it's kind of it's better than having someone with a back injury like Teven Jenkins getting drafted. Yeah. A guy penalized can get, worked NFL wise, mature a little bit, and be a lot better player. So the number 2, another offensive lineman that is on our eyes that we can get early in this draft, whether that be in the 2nd or 3rd round, is Jamaree Salyer, offensive lineman from Georgia. Tony is still kind of sick from opening day still, so cough you, Tony. I hope you're feeling better. But he is 6'3", 321, literally another green. Like he is but he wears it well. He's a strong built player. He's listed as a tackle, but he can play everywhere. He's played everywhere on the interior, especially a lot of interior offensive line time. He really has never played center. I will put that out there, but that's not what we would be drafting him for. He'd be more likely to be a guard, especially with this Larry Borom, Teven Jenkins experiment. But if you draft a tackle, you give Larry Borom the opportunity to play in the interior, which he did this year. Didn't do that bad of a job. Salyer is large and athletic. I mean, 6'3", you hear linemen who are 6'7", but this guy is just a very large individual. He has some of the strongest hands and pass protection, according to, scouts across the NFL. He only allowed 4 pressures in 2021, 14 pressures across 794 career snaps in college. So that is very impressive. And he will likely go later again because of, a couple issues that he has with his footwork. Double teaming, he isn't the best. One-on-one, he's good, but if he has to go out and help somebody else, he doesn't have the footwork in order to do that. So he could fall later in the draft. But again, he's an awkward guy. He could go, he could still be there at 39, and then the Bears could take, Green, for example. Then do they risk it for the biscuit and try to take him at 49, or what are they going to do? So I like to pick a lot. I know we've talked about him. He was actually in our first mock draft. But, his stock keeps going up as time has gone on. So, Tony, who are we taking? If you have any more comments about him, I know that you like him a lot too. If not, let's go into the third guy that the Bears could pick up to improve this offensive line.
I do like Salyer. I hate that I can't say his name. That's the one thing I don't like about him. But I think I took him in the last mock draft too. So I agree with you. There are some really good prospects we could take at our picks. It's just, because the draft is so weird, there might be a run, so we might totally miss out on some of these guys. But thankfully, it's actually pretty deep, so shouldn't be the end of the world. So next guy, they
even said that this is one of the heaviest, no pun intended, linemen, friendly draft in a very long time, and that's good for the Chicago Bears.
Oh yeah, it definitely seems like it. As we keep going along. So here's our third pick, a guy that I'd be fine with if he ended up being our first offensive line taken. Obviously, you'd prefer one of the first two guys, but Rasheed Walker, offensive lineman out of Penn State. Nick, I believe you took him in the last mock draft. One of the better early mid-round guys. He's 6'6", 325, 22 years old. He's big. He's strong. He's got good hands, strong pass blocking. Again, these guys are actually, even these later round prospects are all actually, again, pretty good.
Just giants.
Yeah, they're giants. And they all have really good fundamentals, which is nice. So here's why he would be just in general a good pick. So his size alone, but his ability to also play left tackle, which will allow Larry Borom to move to guard. So I think he'd probably be more of a depth guy, I would guess, and then a starter down the road, years to come, kind of as he works behind some of these guys, mostly because we're going to kind of figure out what Cody Whitehair's future is, whether we release him, trade him, whatever the plan ends up being.
And Whitehair is a weird situation because he has been the most consistent lineman on the Bears offensive line for the last couple of years, and he's a good team leader. But taking Walker allows is for us to move Borom around. It allows opportunity to move guys around and have a big guy playing left tackle, because Teven Jenkins is a true right tackle. Just putting that out there. So the next pick and then our final two picks, we're not going to go too in depth, but this is the last in-depth pick that we're going to go into, is Zion Johnson, offensive lineman from Boston College. And Boston College, is a very weird school when it comes to football, because they always have like 3 studs, but they're never amazing. I mean, sure, they have their good years, but they're never an amazing team. But their players themselves, they go to Boston College. They're clearly an intelligent group of individuals, and that is what this guy is and why he is perfect for Ryan Pohl's resume builder. He's 6'3", 312 pounds. He's actually shedded weight in the offseason. He was a little heavier at the combine. He keeps getting more in shape. And this guy looks like a freaking linebacker, but much larger. 312, 22 years old, very smart. He's been the captain of Boston College, a captain on the team for the last 2 seasons, so he has that leadership role. But also, he's great at taking double teams on certain packages, understanding what his responsibility is, and he has great ball pop. So the second that ball is snapped, he knows how to get to a defender, he knows how to block them, and he's good at learning their technique. his stamina and his interesting stance. He has this weird stance when he's like, usually how they're like ready to go or, hand on the ground. I guess his stance is a little different. I didn't have enough time to look at highlights. So we'll get back to that in the mock draft, because I'm probably going to put him in my next mock draft, but it's just weird. It's weird. And it hurts his stamina, I guess, because it's more energy that he has to use. But again, he's in good shape, and he's going to get even better shape because of NFL trainers. So honestly, this is a new name in our caliber of who we want as potential guys. But being ranked by, CBS and a couple other guys as a mid-round pick, I really like him, especially if the Bears end up going wide receivers in the first couple rounds. I feel like he could be a good steal. I feel like he fits the Ryan Poles, what he wants in an offensive lineman. I'd really like to see Zion Johnson for the Chicago Bears. So Tony, before we go through our speed round, anything on Zion Johnson before we move forward?
That's interesting about the stance thing. I didn't know that. That's new to me. So it's like taking a basketball player who like shoot like what was it, Lonzo, where he's righty but he's shooting like across his body, something like that. So that's interesting. I'll have to do a little research with you and see if it's sustainable. I guess it's really the most important part. So my fifth pick, like you said, that kind of the last guy here, Darian Kinnard. I took him in the last mock draft, offensive lineman out of Kentucky, 6'5", 322, tackle to guard convert. We talked about this. So he's a guy, he can play both, but he'll most likely play guard in the NFL. Could allow for Borom, who may not work out at left tackle in the NFL due to size, to move to guard. So kind of like the last guy I talked about. 825 snaps last year, 411 run snaps, 414 passing snaps, 1 sack, 2 QB hits, 4 hurries, run block grade of 91.8 last year. Only allowed 1 pressure in his final 5 games. In the Pro Football Focus quote I threw at you in the mock draft, Kinnard is one of the most accomplished run blockers at the tackle position in college football. Even though he may end up at guard, you're at an 89.0 or higher run blocking grades over his past 3 seasons. Obviously the grades aren't everything. It's still important. The other stuff is still important, but it's a good sign. Like you never want it to be bad. You never want him to have bad grades. So that's an interesting one. That'll be a later one, obviously.
I think what also hurts him, why he's a later round pick, is because of the school that he went to. It's not like Kentucky's a small school. It's small for a football school, like in that weird way. They still have big attendance. I'm not saying Illinois State gets more people by any means, but I'm also saying that, like, if he were to go to Alabama and have these grades, he's going against better competition. That obviously he'd be a higher round pick. But that's good. Yeah. I mean, hey, we love an underdog, and I'm all about it. Especially, Bears are doing this thing right. And I would go out and get a guy with a chip on his shoulder. So that's just my opinion. But Tony, anything else before we go to our last guy? Yeah,
I was just going to say, I totally agree with you on the Kentucky thing. They did have a good last couple of years, but when they played like a team like Georgia, they just get blown out. But when they play Vanderbilt, when they play, you're right, like Florida, some of these other schools, that's where they turn it on. So there's a reason he's not a first round pick. And I think that's fair, but it's definitely a guy that it seems like he has just kind of, the frame, the fundamentals, and you can kind of build around that raw talent and make him into an NFL lineman.
And speaking of frame and fundamentals, my last guy, this guy's new. This guy's also new. Dylan Parham, offensive lineman from Memphis, another smaller school. I always used to get Kentucky and Memphis like mixed up just because I feel like their logos were kind of similar. I don't know. I'm weird like that. Well, okay, yeah, one color. Hey, we're good. Yeah. Okay, so this guy also is the type of lineman that Ryan Poles wants from a physical standpoint, 6'3", 311, 21 years old. And he's built like a linebacker, again, kind of like, was talking about with Zion Johnson. I think he could be another strong asset. I think he'd be a depth guy for sure. I don't think he would get the start because he isn't too tall. He isn't too heavy, but he isn't too big. He isn't big. Like, that's a big concern for him, is his size because of how he's built. He's built, like, honestly, if he lost 20 pounds, he'd be a tight end. Like, that's just how he's built. But this is what's crazy about him. 4.9340. Wow, that would have been a fast 40 for a lineman. But as a big man, that's insanely fast. And I watched his 40 time on NFL.com, and this guy moves for a lineman. And he is not small by any means. He is very large, making him a hell of a potential rush blocker, especially when they do certain plays where it allows offensive linemen to go upfield. You like a DB's just standing there waiting, and this guy comes up from behind and just absolutely puts him in the ground. See you later, guy. Your career is over.
Oh, they sweep everyone kind of.
Yeah, they sweep everybody.
A sweep out where it's a strong pull out to the right or to the left. Even he just coming down. Oh my gosh. Yeah, sorry.
So that's what analysts say about him, is that he's a great guy for that position because of his speed. Also, he's a very smart guy. Like, apparently he's one of the smarter linemen of the draft, like in regards to being able to read schemes. And he takes double teams super well. Like if he has him in the bag, like he's not going anywhere. He's already looking around like, who else can I go after? So that's what I thought would be good about him. He was a 4-year starter too. So he's a young 4-year starter. So drafting him at 21 could be like a James Daniels situation again, where James Daniel, like 4 years and he's still only 25 years old. So very smart player. I like him, has super strong hands, according to NFL analysts. So can teach it, and it keeps himself from holding penalties. He's not a highly penalized guy, which that's a big thing for the Chicago Bears, but he does struggle against the Akeem Hicks of the world. He does, like they're saying, he needs to put on a little bit more for his size. You might have that weird growth spurt like some athletes have where he grows another inch, but like he needs to put on more mass. Nothing a little Illuminati's can't fix though. So, that's our 6 guys that we would take at reasonable picks that we have. This is obviously subject to change. A lot of these guys are higher ranked, putting that out there. Some of these guys won't fall back to the 4th or 5th round, but if they do, hey, I would definitely take them if the Bears want to go wide receiver heavy first or DB first. So Tony, any more comments before we close out?
Yeah, like we said, this is going to be a weird draft. It's going to be a fun draft, even though there's not that one, star or like 2 stars that we've had in past drafts, just because anything could happen. There might be a run on quarterbacks at some point, even though they're all going to be bad. Thankfully, we're not taking a quarterback this year. This is going to be a fun draft. Anyone could go anywhere, really, at this point. I'm excited.
I love it. Absolutely. I'm with you on that, man. So with that, thank you very much for joining this episode of Just Another Year Chicago. Tune in for Wednesday's episode when we go over wide receivers that we are potentially going to draft, in Thursday's big episode of our final mock draft before the 2022 NFL draft. Will the Bears trade up? We don't know, but we'll find out for you guys later. So with that, thank you very much for joining this episode of Just Another Year Chicago. My name is Nick Brody, joined alongside my good friend and co-host Tony Sapita, and we'll see you guys next time.